Hello and welcome back to Fred in the Shed. I'm up in the Radio Shack. A bit of a different video this one, just perhaps an update, a bit of a vlog if you like, just to let you know what's been going on, and then later I'll show you what's going to be coming up soon on the channel. It's currently about 11:36 AM on a Sunday, and this is probably the most live video you're going to see on Fred in the Shed. Now, normally the videos that you see, they're made weeks in advance. Most YouTubers do this, even if they're a small channel like myself. You get a few videos a few weeks in advance, gives you a little bit of a safety buffer, and then if you want to take a week off from making videos, you've got something to put up on the channel. I like to be regular. The YouTube algorithms, they like regular updates, so I like to produce a video for the weekend, normally on a Sunday, and sometimes I'll squeeze one in the week. Now, you would have noticed that maybe the rate of videos on the channel hasn't gone down, but a few of you probably have noticed that the content isn't as good as my normal content, well, as good as I can make it, and there's a reason for that, and the reason is, unfortunately, I've been a little bit sick. Don't all get worried, it's nothing too serious, but it did take me out of action for a few weeks. So I've now fallen behind on the videos, and I've used up my reserve videos, which were the ones that I did with Mrs. Fred, just to keep the channel going. So I'm now a little bit behind. So in the next couple of weeks ahead, I've got some stuff to bring you. I'll show you that in a minute, but you might see a lag in the videos. There might be a week when I don't upload, or it might not be my best work, so bear with me. So what went wrong? Well, Fred went wrong. Unfortunately, I was absolutely fine. I had a week off work. We'd planned to do some stuff with me and Mrs. Fred. So I decided to take a week away from YouTube. Wasn't going to make any videos or do any editing, and that was fine. We had a week off, did some nice stuff in the garden, didn't go away or anything like that. And then on the Saturday, we had a lovely day with me and Mrs. Fred. And then on the Sunday, I woke up in bed, and I sat up in bed, and the whole world spun. The whole world turned over. Felt like I was falling off a cliff. Massive vertigo, massive feeling of nausea. Really felt ill. Now, I've had this before. It's a inner ear infection. I have suffered from this a few times over the years. I think it's called labyrinthitis or something like that. It's basically the thickening of the inner ear canal, the liquid that you've got in the inner ear canal. It follows normally a cold, and I had a head cold the week before, and then what happens is little crystals form in that fluid, and they move around your ear canal. They touch the tiny little micro hairs that you've got around the inner ear canal, and that controls your balance. And what happens is, when you move, when you sit up in bed or you try and walk, when you stop, the fluid kind of carries on, and it tricks your brain into thinking that you're still in motion, and your brain gets confused and you get massive vertigo. It's a horrible debilitating infection. It completely wipes you out. If you've never had it, you really don't want it. If you have had it, you know what I'm talking about. I can only describe it. You know, if you'll get really drunk, you know that sensation when you suddenly realise, maybe at the end of the party, and you haven't realised how much you've been drinking, and then you sit down somewhere quiet, or you lay down, and then the whole room starts to spin. And that's normally about 30 to 50 seconds before you run off and throw up. Well, if you can imagine that spinning when you're tumbling and spinning, if you imagine that probably 5 times worse, and you imagine that doesn't stop, and that goes on for days and days. It is absolute hell. It really is quite bad. I've had it before, and it takes about 7 to 10 days for it to subside. There are some exercises that you can do. I think they're called the Epley maneuver, and the doctor told me about this years ago. If you suffer from this, or you have suffered, I do recommend that you do these exercises. They generally involve you laying on your side, and then you tilt your head in a certain way, and the inertia and gravity, that clears these little tiny crystals out of the inner ear canal, and it really does work. The downside is, when you do these exercises for the first time, my God, this really throws your head into another dimension. Things really do spin. You might be sick, but it does let you know that what you've got is an infection in the inner ear canal. It's very worrying to get this massive attack of vertigo. If you've never had it before, it could be quite worrying. You might think that you're having some kind of a stroke or something like that. So if you do these exercises, these Epley manoeuvres, at least it lets you know what the problem is. But they do make you feel really, really quite ill. But luckily for me, and I have found this before, if you persevere with these exercises 3 times a day, then after a couple of days it gets better. And by the 3rd day, I was able to do the exercises without feeling the need to chuck up. That's what's been going on. I've been a bit sick. I was off work and I managed to get back to work. But it's about 2 weeks now since it was at its worst. I'm still not 100%, and I've just found it really difficult to concentrate on to make the videos, especially the editing. I find that I just start getting a little bit dizzy, and that's why I haven't tried to make any videos. And that's what's going to be the delay. But I'm definitely on the mend. Consequently, I haven't really had a chance to do any radio. I did try even just listening to the radio, but I don't know, it was weird. And every time I tried to concentrate on something, I found my head started to swim. And it's such a shame, because I do know there's been some really, really good skip coming in. I've been watching other people's videos on YouTube and I've missed out on that. But I'm getting back into the zone now. So just bear with me and I'll get there. And let me just show you what's going to be coming up, because I've got some exciting things, at least I think they're exciting, coming onto the channel. First thing we've got coming up is I've managed to find a cheap mag loop antenna that I'll be trying to get this working on 11 meters. Now, mag loop antennas, I have been tempted in the past. When I was having some QRP, I had a PLT interference noise. I don't know if you remember that. Those of you that follow the channel, thank you very much. You remember I had that clicking, that horrible clicking noise, all the way up from to about 27,200, covered the 555. Thankfully, that's just gone away on its own accord. I've no idea what it was. Obviously, our neighbours were using something that was interfering with my radio. A lot of you said, Fred, get yourself a magnetic loop antenna. They're highly tunable. You can tune out a lot of man-made noise. Problem was, back then, I did look into it, and they were pretty much expensive. All of them were expensive, aimed at the ham radio market. Ham radios market tend to have deeper pockets than you would use for CB. I like to keep things cheap and affordable to try to encourage people to come back onto radio. I mean, if you know, people do progress and go on to ham radio, and you have to spend a little bit more money for that equipment, but I like to keep it cheap. And I know some of you have said, Fred, would you review some of these small little QRP transceivers that are coming onto the market? And I have been offered a couple. I'll put some pictures up. I have been offered a couple for review, but I've turned them down again because it's just too high at the starting point. The price is too high for people coming onto CB radio and using CBs. It's something that you would go on to, and I think it might put people off if they see the price of those radios. So I have turned those free radios down. Some of you say, oh, you're only doing this for free equipment. Honestly, I'm not. I turn a hell of a lot of stuff down that's in the higher price bracket. Anyway, so back to the magnetic loop. So I didn't find one that I thought was affordable, and then I happened to see this magnetic loop on Banggood, and it's cheap. Comes in at under £70, which is exceptionally cheap for a mag loop antenna. Contacted Banggood, and they were very generous, and they said they'd send one in for review. So that's a good thing. I've not even got it out of the box. You can see I just haven't felt well enough to look at it. Just some basics on this mag loop antenna. It will tune on the HF band 5 to 30 megs. So it covers the 27 megahertz CB band. I'm not sure on the SWR. I don't know what it says. It'll get an SWR of down to 1.2. I've got a feeling when I come to test this, it's going to be higher than that. I'm really looking at a 1.5 SWR as a maximum to be on the safe side, but not quite sure how it will tune. Also, it says in the paperwork, well, you don't get any paperwork. It says if you look on the website, there's no instructions, by the way, in this. I'm going to have to fumble and find my way when I make the video. It says it will handle 20 watts. I can't see that myself. These mag loops are generally all QRP. They're low wattage, probably a maximum of 10 watts. It all comes down to the variable capacitors that they use. If you want to run a little bit more power through a mag loop, you need a much bigger variable capacitor. Some of the really expensive ones, they actually use a Russian-made variable cap, which is set in oil. Because the cheaper ones, and this is probably, it might even be able to take this apart after I've done the review, but I imagine this has just got commercial variable caps in there. £70, they're not going to be able to commission anyone to build proper variable capacitors, so these are going to be very, very small. And what happens is you've got a very narrow gap between the tuning plates, and you get arcing. If you increase the power, these run at surprisingly high voltage, and you get an arcing between the plates. That causes you a problem. So it says 20 watts. I'll be running probably a maximum of 10 watts on sideband through this magnetic loop. Looking forward to making this review. I mean, Awesome Dave had a double mag loop a few years ago, I remember, and he was getting local contacts on that in his loft. I believe he was getting out 7-8 miles. Mainly these will be good for skip. But if you're in a situation, and this is sometimes it's heartbreaking when I read the comments and people have followed my advice, they've bought a 6900, they've got a full-size 18-foot base station antenna, be it a Game Master or even just a Silver Rod. They've put it up and they're finding that they're getting S8 to S9 of noise on FM, man-made noise, and it's completely wiping out all of the signals that are coming in. And they're like, oh Fred, you know, what can I do other than going mobile and driving away from the noise? So I'm hoping that when I review this, and hopefully I can get this working, that it might be an alternative for a large 18-foot antenna. This shouldn't be very big when I put it together, and I'm hoping that being tunable, you'll be able to filter out all of that man-made noise, and you'll be able to receive some of the weaker stations. That's the idea. I don't know how it's going to work. I have looked on YouTube. There's a couple of videos about this. As far as I can see, no one's actually recorded a contact on this antenna. They've proved that it receives, and certainly no one has used it on 11 meters. Not that I can see. So yeah, whether it works, but it's cheap. £69.91 on Banggood, and I think you can get a discount, so you can get it down even lower to about £65, and that is very, very cheap. So we'll be looking forward to doing that. That'll be a video coming up real soon once I'm back in the slot. Another video that I'm looking forward to making is another one of these quite neat little pocket SDR receivers with a screen. You remember I've had this one a while ago. This uses a Malahai software. I've been a complete knob with this. What I did with this one was I left it on charge up here in the shack, and then I don't know what happened. I just didn't come up here for about 5 days, and when I did come up here, this had been on charge all the time, and unfortunately I think it's slightly damaged the battery, because when I fully charge this, I'm only getting about 35 to 40 minutes out of the battery, and I was getting 2 hours. So I think I've buggered the battery in this. I might go into it at a later date. I mean, it's only a lithium-ion battery. I'm sure I can replace it. So it's a bit unfortunate. Only problem with this little radio, and it was pretty neat, was the price on this. This was coming in, I believe, at about £160 to £170, and it just kept going up, which was quite expensive. So I did go back to Banggood when I finished that review, and I said, if you get anything that's cheaper and good quality, let me know, and I'll be happy to do a review. And they did respond to that email, and they've sent in this little SDR radio. Now firstly, when I picked this up straight away, it's a bit heavier than the original one. I think the screen is slightly bigger. I think this is a 4.3 inch screen, 800 by 400 pixels. It's heavier, which I think means it has a larger battery. They're saying that it's got a 10-hour 500 mAh battery in that, which is better than this one, because this was only ever a 2-hour radio, which I found a little bit restricting. So this one, I'm really interested in giving this one a review. Currently on sale at less than £90 on Banggood, so we're getting on to half the price from this. I haven't had a proper look at it yet, but just looking at the software, it seems to use its own derived software. It's not a Malahai version. I guess that's to keep the price down. It's probably a clone, I imagine it is. I did find a picture of the motherboard, and it has deepelec.com stenciled onto it. I went to the website, and it shows the radio. It's the output of the antenna is a different place, and I think it's BNC, and this is SMA. So I think this is probably a clone for £89, but it looks pretty good quality. Obviously it does CW, AM, FM and sideband. On the HF band it tunes all the way down to 10k, all the way up to 30 megs, but it goes on from there and it covers the air band. So this tunes all the way up to 149 megahertz. So I think there's a hand band in there as well, but it will cover the air band, which this one never did. So that's quite good. Also, you've got 99 presets as well. And yeah, it's quite heavy, 300 grams, as I say, 10-hour battery life. So look forward to doing a review on that once I film my proper self. I had a lot of comments about people wanting to get into shortwave radio listening, which was quite encouraging because shortwave radio listening has dropped off with internet radio. A few people said, you know, should I get one of these little all-in-one SDR radios? Well, you can do. They're very, very good fun and you get a lot for your money. But personally, I'm going to say, if you want to get into serious shortwave radio listening, get a dedicated shortwave receiver. This is my Texan 600. I've had this for a number of years and I still rate these Texan radios. There's the 600 and the 660 for about the same price as you're going to pay, say, for one of these. You can certainly get the 600 second hand on eBay in good condition. You might grab a 660 as well. I think the newest radio about the £70-80 mark is the 330. I've not reviewed one, but it looks a fine radio. So yeah, shortwave wise, get yourself a dedicated receiver. These are fun, but I'd still go for that. So I think I'll bring this to a close. Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate you listening to this update. I'm sorry that I can't do an in-depth full video at the moment. Once I get back to my full self, these videos will be coming up. I've also got other videos planned. Again, I'll be getting those on the channel very, very shortly. So thanks for watching. There's the thumb up from Fred in the Shed. Just take a second before you go and hit the thumbs up button below. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, appreciate your view time. Thanks for dropping in. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Cheers, guys and girls. Oh.